Guys, as you guys can see, it is almost Christmas time and the markets are heating up. There's a few big potential trading ideas that are currently being developed on a lot of altcoins, and in today's video, I will be providing you guys with two major trading ideas that I'm executing myself as well today on the charts of both AVAX and Litecoin. After going over AVAX and Litecoin and my trading ideas for both of them, I'll also explain my view on the higher time frame for Bitcoin to you guys. The first one that we are looking at is Litecoin. And what we can see over here is a very clean chart, guys. We always have to start on a higher time frame to understand the higher time frame context. And this is something that I've been speaking to you guys a lot lately. When we have a very strong uptrend like this, what happens very often is that the first bearish move to the downside and the first bearish break to the downside turn out to be a trap. Now we can see that over here we have a very obvious sweep and a very obvious break to the downside right here. Now, as I've said, within strongly trending environments, this often turns out to be a trap. And this means that this break to the downside is actually engineering liquidity above the highs over here and is actually engineering above the high over here. How so? Because due to the fact that we have this break to the downside, many people are now trying to short Litecoin with their stop loss above these highs over here or above this high over here, targeting lower levels because they see a very clean sweep and a very clean move to the downside, getting a break of structure. But as I've said, within strongly trending environments, the first break to the downside, and the exact same thing goes for a downtrending market, whenever we have a first break towards the upside in that case, turns out to be a trap. So understanding the higher time frame context, we have that potential fake break of structure to the downside, we have a potential higher time frame range that is currently breaking out on Litecoin, in which we are breaking out above the range high. Beautiful potential range breakout model over here, in which the first breakout above that range high turns out to be a deviation. Then we fall back into the range, we sweep liquidity inside of the range, and then we reclaim the range high once more, which means that also based off the range trading theory, we should be targeting buy-side liquidity. Now, in this case for Litecoin, we have a lot of buy-side liquidity that is lining up over here, in which we haven't taken out all of those highs just yet, which means that the higher time frame context is pointing towards more upside for Litecoin, which means that if in the intraday chart I get my triggers, I can start looking for long executions on Litecoin, which is exactly what we're going to do. So that means that I'm moving towards the intraday chart. And what we can see over here is an extremely clean chart for Litecoin. First off, we had one fake break to the upside over here and another fake break towards the upside over here. What are they doing? They're engineering liquidity over here and they're engineering liquidity right over here. Price is always attracted towards those liquidity pools. So what we can see over here is a strong push inside of that liquidity pool, and that's where Litecoin starts moving sideways. Now, this sideways movement within that engineered liquidity pool is offering the time for smart money to accumulate new buy positions. Then we should look for smart money reversal. What we can see over here is that Litecoin tagged into this demand area. Beautiful demand where we swept some lows, formed demand and got a strong push to the upside. The demand got retested once, the demand got retested twice. Now we can see that after that second retest, Litecoin gets a high probability break of structure towards the upside. How so? It's due to two reasons. First off, we break through a significant high within the intermediate trend. What do I mean by that? This high over here is significant because it brings us to a lower low compared to this low that brought us to a higher high compared to this high that brought us to that low. Take some time to process that. So therefore, we break through a significant high. The second reason why this is a high probability break of structure over here on the Litecoin chart is due to the fact that before we get this move to the upside, we get a high probability liquidity sweep. Why is this a high probability liquidity sweep? Because the low that we sweep is not just an insignificant low. It's a low that contains a lot of liquidity. Why does this low contain a lot of liquidity? Because of the break of this high over here. We break through an insignificant high. Retail traders think that the price of Litecoin is breaking out over here, so they start looking for longs within that lower time frame consolidation area. If they start looking for longs over here targeting higher levels, they should be seeking for a certain invalidation for their trade. Now we know that people are always greedy, so they're not going to use the lowest low over here to cover their stop loss. They're going to use this low over here to cover their stop loss, which means that the people that long, due to this low probability break of structure, they're engineering liquidity for us beneath this low over here. Now we know that a break of structure is only valid and only high probability if first of all we break through a significant high or low, and second of all, before we break through that significant high or significant low, we get a high probability liquidity sweep. Now that is something that we saw in both occasions right over here, which means that we find ourselves an invalidation for our bullish thesis on Litecoin beneath the low, because this is the low that started this impulse that gave us this high probability break of structure. Now what we are looking at is something very interesting, because we are looking at a potential PO3 for Litecoin, in which we are potential accumulating over here. I'm looking for potential manipulation over here before potential expansion towards the upside. Now, I've been speaking a lot about valid and invalid PO3s. I've made a YouTube video on this as well, guys. I'll leave the link to that YouTube video in the description down below, because you need to understand the difference between a valid and invalid PO3. Within this video, I'm not going to explain to you guys why this is a high probability invalid PO3, but check out the video. You can find the link in the description down below. And in that video, I'll explain the difference. Now, due to the fact that this is a valid PO3, I'm looking for a sweep of this low, and this is where I will start accumulating a long position on Litecoin, targeting higher levels. So my first entry is up on the sweep of that low. We have found ourselves an invalidation, and then we should be seeking to target buy-side liquidity. Now we can see that over here, we always want to target the second to highest high. That is our main draw. And if we target the second to highest high, we can see that it exactly offers us an RR of 2.07. Now the AVAX chart is quite similar compared to Litecoin, and we are looking at a similar execution as well. First off, we can see that AVAX retested this very pivotal previous resistance area, this very pivotal range area successfully. So the higher time frame context should be seeking for buy-side liquidity. And what we can see over here is that we have a beautiful draw on liquidity right here for AVAX. We have a very big wick over here, which is obviously a draw on liquidity, but we always want to use the second to highest high. So this is our main draw on liquidity for AVAX, and we can also see that AVAX is reclaiming the previous bearish fair value gap right over here. So definitely some strong bullish signs for AVAX on the higher time frame. So that means that once again, higher time frame context is pointing towards more upside. Besides that, we also have another fake break to the downside on AVAX. And as I've taught you guys, within strongly trending environments, the first fake break of structure turns out to be a trap. It is meant to engineer liquidity above this high over here and above this high over here. And we can see that the first liquidity pool has already been swept. So the people that trusted this move to the downside and trusted this break of structure to the downside and therefore shorted the price of AVAX over here or up on the pullback, most of them already got wrecked once we took out the high over here. But we want to wreck some more people, so we continue to look for longs on the intraday chart. Now when we move towards the intraday chart, once again we can see that it is a very similar chart as to Litecoin, because what we can see over here is first off, once again, that clean sweep of the high that engineers liquidity over here. We sweep that liquidity pool right over here, and after sweeping that liquidity pool, we get a strong push to the upside, and that strong push towards the upside, guys, once again gives us a valid and more importantly a high probability break of structure. Therefore, we find ourselves a clean invalidation beneath the low over here. So we should be looking for potential execution. Once again, just as for Litecoin, also AVAX is creating a potential PO3 over here. Once again, check out the video to understand why this is a valid PO3. Another slight draw on liquidity over here. So what I'm looking at for AVAX is once again the manipulation part, where I'm looking to accumulate a long position on AVAX, in which afterwards I'm targeting higher time frame buy-side liquidity as explained on the higher time frame context. So if AVAX gets a push to the downside today or tomorrow, I'm looking to start building a long position up on the sweep over here with my invalidation over here, and then I'm targeting higher time frame buy-side liquidity over here as explained at the beginning of the video. So we start on the higher time frame. After understanding the higher time frame context and figuring out a bias based off that higher time frame context, we start looking at an intraday chart for a high probability trigger. And there's a lot of reasons why a trigger could be high probability or low probability, and it's due in the details. After getting the trigger, we start looking for an execution. And also for an execution, guys, we always want to enter where other people are getting stopped out. So beautiful long ideas for both AVAX and Litecoin. Now let's move over to my trading ideas for Bitcoin as well. For Bitcoin, guys, it is very plain and simple. We can see that this price action over here is just extremely ugly. It is extremely ugly, especially for the bears, because we are slow grinding towards the upside and there's so many bears that are constantly trying to short the price of Bitcoin. Constantly trying to short the price of Bitcoin every single time. Now, we are either going to continue to slow grind towards the upside, or we are potentially getting that fake break to the downside to engineer liquidity over here, and then we continue to the upside. My advice is to not focus on trading Bitcoin because it has already seen the meat of its move, but rather focus on trading altcoins and milking the trend on altcoins until it comes to an end.